Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have Theresa Carpenter on this interview with us. Well, actually, this is a fun podcast because you're coming in from Germany, aren't you?
I am from Stuttgart, Germany, coming in. So, Danke. I guess that's like the one thing I do know. I was like, oh gosh, can I think of one thing that I've learned while I'm out here?
Well, and it is a little bit late, but with that being said, I need to explain who you are, and you can stop me at any time. But Theresa is an incredible individual that we were introduced through a mutual friend. I believe it was Chrysanthi, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And Theresa is a naval officer, and soon you're going to find out that she is a storyteller. She runs a podcast called S.O.S, which is Stories of Service. And I'm really looking forward into getting in there. She also has an incredible life story, and it's neat to see how you went from, and I'll let you tell it, but just from where you were at the time before you joined the Navy until now. And so, Theresa, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Karch. And did I pronounce your name right? I want to make sure I get it right.
You call me Gary Karch. It's whatever Gary. You call me, I'll answer to it.
We call him the Thing.
There you go.
I love it. But
thank you so much for having me.
Oh, again, pleasure is ours. And I'm just wondering if we could just jump straight into it.
Absolutely.
I was reading your background, and man, you had some fun as a youth.
Yes. I was definitely a partier and a rule breaker, and the one who is kind of getting all my friends into trouble. I mean, I grew up in a very, middle class Catholic school upbringing. But I would say that I was always sort of the one who was pushing boundaries and thinking like, oh, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do this. And, getting people in trouble or sneaking out at night. And somebody's mom had to pick us up at a frat party one night in college and their minivan. It was very embarrassing. And somebody's mother shows up at their house. But yes, I was always that person. And I sort of drifted aimlessly after high school. All my friends went off to college and started their lives or started figuring out what they were going to do. And instead of me figuring out what I was going to do, I just kept working because I needed to support myself. But I was kind of drifting from dead end job to dead end job. And because I had moved out my senior year in high school. And so by that point, I think I had like 7 jobs. I had done everything and anything you can think of in the restaurant industry. I had worked at clothing stores, worked at phone centers, and I just met a couple people who had talked me into going into the Navy. I mean, that's really all it was. And I just wanted to travel. And I thought, wow, this might be a way to pay off some of my bills and maybe get some direction about where I should go in life. It really wasn't this like big, ginormous calling, like, oh my God, I'm going to serve my country. A lot of people think that, but I think when people enlist like I did, I don't know if that's always the reason. It's more just, gosh, I don't really have anything keeping me in Columbus, Ohio. I think it's time I figure out what I'm going to do. So that's what I did. And I enlisted and I started fixing aircraft as an aviation electrician's mate.
Whoa. Wow. Well, first of all, I didn't realize you were from Columbus, Ohio. And I've never seen a more rabid fan than an Ohio State fan.
Oh my God. They're crazy. It is a religion. We had Scarlet and Gray Day every Friday at my school. You didn't have to wear your uniform. You got to wear scarlet and gray. That's how serious it was. And then on Saturdays, on game day, the streets are just dead because everybody's at a sports bar or they're at home watching the game. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to digress a little bit because I think that's probably why you have such a high degree of loyalty in different things. I was in Schmitz in Germantown over there. And they have their chocolate factory right next door to the restaurant. Yes. And we went over there and my business partner, I don't know why he said this. He goes, my business partner hates Ohio State. wait, what? And I remember the business owner looking me straight in the eye, and she said, in all seriousness, "We can do without your business."
We take our Buckeyes very seriously.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
it was hilarious. It was hilarious. But wow. Well, from Columbus then into the Navy. Man,
Yes.
what did you start to learn? Because there was something in an interview that you had mentioned. You said it should have been one of the most memorable nights of my career, but I destroyed it because I couldn't control my drinking. I want to go back to that because I think that was pre-Navy, if I remember correctly.
That actually, no, that was I was setting a scene for an article that I'd written in Warhorse about sort of the pinnacle of my career in the Navy, where I was at a reception for an exercise. So usually the opening ceremonies, they do like a guest VIP, very important people reception. And I just ended up getting completely trashed that night because I was in an uncomfortable situation where I felt awkward and anxious, and I didn't really have a lot of friends on that ship. There was just some things going on and on a personal level that I just didn't feel like I really had anybody to talk to. It was just a very hard situation for me. And so my solution when I used to feel uncomfortable or I felt awkward in a group was, I'll just get hammered. I'll just get trashed because everybody seems to like me when I'm drunk. And they always thought I was super fun. And I always felt like I had lots of friends because I was trashed. And so it sort of became my go-to to build intimacy and closeness with people. And so that started at a very young age. And it would go on and off all my life. And it never really stopped until that night. And I started realizing that there was some sort of a connection to social anxiety, to alcohol. I had never put those two things together and realized that, okay, I'm an anxious person just naturally, and I'm okay with it now. I've learned to embrace it, and I have no qualms about saying that I am. But back then, I didn't really understand that I was using the alcohol to numb that.
Wow. I am thinking of a number of people that we've interviewed, and you just connected some pretty serious dots for me. We hear that.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't understand, like, that's really what's causing them to drink, or at least drink initially, is because I don't feel good about who I am. I'm ashamed in a group because, when you're in a group of people that you don't know, and the only thing you can do is boring small talk, because that's the only thing you all know how to do. And it's awkward because you realize like nobody really sees you. They don't know who you are. And a lot of people don't want to put on that mask and do that performance. So it's easier to just get drunk because then the inhibitions go away and you're like, I don't give a shit. I'll say whatever I want. And so that's kind of how drinking started. And then it became a crutch where if I was ever in those situations, especially the more uncomfortable I was, the more I would drink. And so that just became a way for me to numb those feelings of anxiousness and anxiety around people that I didn't either know or I didn't think liked me, or if I'd been bullied, because I dealt with a lot of bullying growing up. And so that was just something that I did as a defense mechanism for a lot of years on and off until I got to the root of it and realized that it was something that I could control if I could build up my confidence. And so, that's really what I had to do. I had to work on building my confidence. And a lot of it came down to really just seeing, as the other guest said on your podcast, that we all have suffering. We all have stuff we're dealing with, where none of us are unscathed from trauma. Everyone has trauma. And when I started to look at it like that, I started going, my gosh, this is no big deal. And I started not seeing myself as less than others.
Wow. I have a question for you, and I've seen this with patients and stuff that I've dealt with in the past, just kind of hearing their background and stuff like that, is it really becomes an issue when the person that works in social settings is this kind of destructive person. So you have to kind of transform yourself into this thing that you really don't like so that you can function in whatever environment that you're in. But then to try and reverse that, how did that happen for you? How did you go from like, I don't need this version of Theresa to put myself out in the world? How did you make that transition? Because that can be incredibly difficult.
You have to build a tribe of people around you who get who you are, and then surround yourself by them routinely. And the problem I had was, especially in the military, being there's not that many women to begin with, and then as you get more senior in rank, there's even less. And so you have to find people who support you and who you speak to on a day-to-day basis. And that was the key for me, was building healthy relationships with people who were not emotionally destructive. The problem is that when you're in an emotionally destructive place, you tend to only attract others who are emotionally destructive. And until you recognize that's what you're doing, because a lot of times it's very subconscious, because you don't feel like the quote unquote normal people will get the real you. And so you learn to just only surround yourself by those people. And then you have this mindset of, I'm a victim, the whole world's against me, I can only be around other people who look at life the same way. And so it's really about changing your mindset in the way that you see the world. I spent years thinking I was a victim and blaming others.
I was going to say, and a big part of that, and a big difficult part of that, is you also have to leave behind those people physically. That, you know what I mean, as you get these new people that are supportive, you know, I see it so many times where it's the hard part is giving, that was the fun you. That was the exciting in your mind. And so the people that you were with were also the fun people and the exciting people, you know what I mean? So it had to be incredibly difficult to say goodbye to that version. Physically saying goodbye to those people that were part of that destructive crew, so to speak.
Well, the nice part about being in the Navy is I move a lot. So the same people that are still like that. I mean, I'll be honest, there's still people, especially family members, that are still have some of those same behaviors or do some of those destructive things. But I have a lot of boundaries now, and things just kind of rub off of me that never used to rub off of me. I would spend hours obsessing over somebody's comment, or I had to get even, like, you know, this whole feeling like, oh, they said this, I gotta win. Oh, I'm, you know, and then you learn this like wonderful art of just not answering the snotty passive aggressive message, or you don't even respond to the comment, or you hide the comment that's on your social media. You don't have to respond to these people, and they don't, it doesn't make you win if you engage. I have learned the art of disengagement. It's because it's not going to be good for me. Why do I want to waste my time and my space, my headspace, dealing with people like that?
I wish you could teach that to a lot of people on social media right now.
I mean, they let the comments and the trolls really get to them. And it's like, it's such a waste of your time. And a lot of it is, you know, I'll be honest, it's also knowing when a workplace is a good fit, because a lot of times what I found is that I had all these like relationships from my childhood that were maybe not so healthy, and then I would engage in those same relationships at work with those same kinds of people. And now that I'm getting older, and one of my goals was always to be financially independent, and that's what I'm still working towards now. And one of the reasons for that is because I want to be able to choose who I surround myself with. And the only way you can do that is by being financially independent. If you're not financially independent, you are at the mercy of being around people that may not be healthy. And I can't put myself in a situation where I'm going to surround myself, where I'm going to be working side by side with somebody that's got some kind of trauma and is going to try to bully me or do something silly. I can rub it off. I can let it go, but it's still painful to have to deal with every day. And I don't want to deal with that anymore.
I'm thinking you need to write a book. The Art of Disengagement is what I think. As you were sharing your story, I've mentioned this on another podcast before, but I was bullied too. When I was growing up not in high school, in elementary school, it was a daily event to get beat up, some form or another. Wow, and so it was, and remember, it was the time of the Vietnam War. I was one of the only guys that looked like me going to my elementary school. I was obviously different. And it was it was a very interesting thing from Japanese culture wise. I'd always been a little bit more quiet, but then that happened, and then it made me really think, what am I doing? Why was I born this way, or blah blah blah, right? And then
Right.
something happened is my dad put me in martial arts, and I flipped my first bully.
Wow, that's great.
Wow. And it was pure dumb luck that it happened. It was nothing tough on my part. But it set the reputation early on. But I also remember, and going back to this art of disengagement, is I would use that now as a place of power to go in and do dumb stuff myself, and eventually became a bully in some sorts myself against people that were obviously bigger or what have you. But it was something that was such a vicious cycle. And it wasn't until I was in college and had my first psychology class that I learned about the Napoleonic complex. I thought, that explains a lot.
Wow. But for you to have that realization and be able to look at yourself and go, shoot, I'm doing these things.
Right.
I've had the same thing. I was passive aggressive. A lot of times when I couldn't confront a bully, or I couldn't confront somebody I was having an issue with, I would just play these like passive aggressive games with them.
Right.
And, and I looking back, I know that's what I was doing, but that's so great that you can look at yourself and go, oh gosh, I don't like that about me.
Yeah.
And because that's the key to changing. You can't change anything unless you recognize that you have a problem.
Well, what I
sounds
love,
like we're all kind of human and flawed. Huh? Who would have thought?
Imagine that.
and this leads me to the next thing though, too, is reading again. I love reading about our guests because it teaches me so much about myself. Whoa. And I had to laugh at this one thing. This is a quote. It says, "From bullied to badass."
Yes, I put that on my Instagram. I was like, ooh, what two things kind of go together? Ooh, okay. There we go.
Well, with that, and that doesn't convey, speaking with you there, it doesn't convey what you conventionally think that bad mother would be, right?
Yes.
It's essentially something of a realization, is what I'm guessing that was. I want to understand, when did you come to that realization? You've explained what it made you feel once you overcame the destructive habits and even overcome the bullying. But at what point, and what made you realize that? And then the second part of that question is, how has that helped you to help others?
So I think that it's like a lot of people say, like, oh, I had this like rock bottom moment, or I have this one day where I knew things were better. But for me, it really wasn't like that. It was more of like this gradual build. And then I would have things that would set me back a little bit. Then I build a little bit, then I gradually go. But I would say that what really was key to my healing was meeting my husband. So about 5 years ago, I met my now husband, and I'd never had support that was consistent in my life up until that point. I'd been married before, but my ex-husband and I were not very compatible. And it became very clear for a lot of years into the marriage that we were not going to be able to work out because of just certain ways we both saw the world, and things were just, we weren't on the same page with so many things. But when I met my husband, and to have somebody who looks at the world very similar to the way I do, and has some of the same values that I do, who supports me and stands by me and is in my corner, I was just like, oh my God, we can take on the world together. Like, it's this incredible feeling, like, this is what it's like. This is what life can be like, to have an equal, a partner in crime, and I just never had that for so many years. I mean, I'm 45 and I only met him when I was 40. So I was going at it alone for a lot of years in terms of just my mental health and my friends, and just trying to navigate my career in the Navy. And so when I met him, a lot of things just sort of clicked into place. And it was even during, like, when I got the thing that happened in Malabar, that was the reception where I had, what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Me and him had only been together less than a year. Like, that was still very early on in our relationship. And I was still trying to decide if I could trust him, if we really were going to work out, because I just never had anything that I felt like I could count on for all these years. And so once I found the partner, but even to get to the place where you can meet a partner like that, you have to be certain, because he's very emotionally healthy. He doesn't have a lot of trauma. His mom raised him very well, and he's just a good man, and he's got good values. And so for me to be in a place where a guy like him would like me, I had to work on me. And so thankfully I was in a good enough place. But then after I met him and after the years that we've been together, a lot of things have just that I used to care about just started suddenly slipping away, because my priorities started to change, and I started to really deepen into wanting to create my own content, wanting to produce my own stuff, because again, that's how I'm going to give back. That's how I'm going to be inspirational, hopefully, to other people, that they can do the same thing that I did. But you have to have those other pieces in there first. You have to have the emotional support, right? You have to have a job that can sustain you or support you while you're pursuing your passions. Even if you can't do your passions full time, you've got to have something that will pay the bills while you're doing your passions full time. And I do like my job in the Navy as a storyteller. So I started having the things line up that I had worked for all kind of come together.
I appreciate what you said too. It's not just a one-time event where it's, woo, I've achieved, boom. It's just that gradual thing. And it's a long game, right? It really is a long game, that it's just that matter of consistent progression and so on and so forth. And hopefully you're not all hearing my stomach growling.
Nope.
Well, it is like, what is it, like lunchtime where you guys, I don't know where are you guys from? Where am I?
In Idaho.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Arizona.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it's way earlier in the day, like lunch-ish time. All right.
But it's not going to stop us from not having this interview. That's for sure. And this is,
no.
It's been it's so enlightening. You're saying things that aren't like, whoa, as much as they make me think. They bring their thought provoking, and just seeing your journey from that, and seeing where you are now. Listening to some of your podcasts has been a wonderful event, because you could tell that the people that you are speaking with
right on
have that same degree of learning that you had. And so to see you connect like that has been a fun little activity.
Thank you. Yes, I get inspiration a lot from the people that I talk to, and it's amazing when I'm able to connect with somebody who's had a similar path, like just my last guest. Like, gosh, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, just because I'm in such a heightened great mood talking to you guys. But when I had him on, my last guest, he and I have a very similar journey when it comes to getting through trauma and other things. And it was just so amazing to talk to somebody that's kind of been at the same place and is at the same point in their life where they're starting to really grow into and deepen into the things that give them joy. So that was really neat. And I love it. Oh yeah. It's like, I mean, you guys probably feel the same way. It is such an honor to talk to people and to hear their story.
Couldn't agree more. Matter of fact, Gary calls it his fix.
It really is. Well, one thing I really appreciate about kind of the story of how you met your significant other there is that, you know, it's not that Disney story. You were still flawed, you know, but he was emotionally wise enough to see the potential that you had, even though while you were still trying to, you know, while you were still improving and you were still trying to, you know, control some demons or trauma that you had going on. I think so many times we, you know, people expect that Disney story where all of a sudden there's the kiss and then we all ride off into the sunset, which doesn't happen that way.
No,
it never has. You know what I mean? And then to segue into what we're talking about right now is the power of stories, and the power of even just doing like these podcasts is so incredible. Being able to connect with people, and just like Marie says, I get so much more out of this than I'm sure our guests do, because just hearing people's stories and, you know, and bouncing off my own personal and Maurice's stories and stuff like that, Yeah, I walk away. I usually get about, 2 to 4 days of just elevated emotion of where this is awesome and I learn so
Yeah.
much. I get to think about it. And then what's cool is then you take that to your next guest. There's always a piece of it that rolls over to the next one. We were talking a little bit, well, we talked before the podcast started about Stu and the A&E, with his addiction thing and how that affected you, and it really affected me.
Mhm.
That's something that becomes a part of us. It becomes that family, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
Welcome
I
to
know
the family.
exactly what you guys are saying. Thank you. And you know what? I'm the same way. Like, I love like now following like the guests that I've had on the show and,
Yep.
and seeing like where they're going. Like one of my early guests, Jenny Harmon, she's a painter and a yoga teacher. And oh man, now she's got a website and she's selling her paintings. And it's so amazing to watch. And I noticed too that you guys have a lot of the same guests that I've had on. You've had Jen Klein, you've had Barbie the welder. I mean, it was just kind of funny. I'm like looking at some of your, I'm like,
Awesome.
oh, we've had some of the same people on our show.
And all those folks that you brought up, they went through similar life experiences, right? It just
Yeah.
from traumatic to they really were, and they came out on top. Amazing. Well, I've got to ask you, since I saw that you were one of the leaders in the Navy. Matter of fact, I saw one that was naval commander. It was awesome. Wow, that sounds so tough. What's that like? There you are. You've achieved so many things, and you're changing so many different perceptions. And I'd assume that you're changing so many perceptions as you work with so many individuals. What are some of the neat things that you've been able to see, and what are some of the challenges that you've seen along the way there? We spoke about some of them, but just some of them that stand out to you.
I think that some of the challenges are definitely inherent in being a public affairs officer. So everybody thinks that they know how to do my job. Like everybody thinks like, oh gosh, I communicate. So I must be a public affairs officer. And we throw around the word messaging at work all the time. Like, what is the messaging on this? Well, we think the messaging should be this. And everybody has an opinion on messaging. It doesn't matter who you are. And what's really interesting to me is like, in the current situation right now, obviously with Russia and Ukraine, there's only one person who gets to control the messaging, and that's the National Security Council, not you guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's just really funny, but everybody has an opinion. And it's because people just want to be involved. They want to be involved. They want to help. They want to be part of the team. But I'd say that's probably one of the challenges is that it doesn't matter what meeting I go to, they look straight at the PAO, the public affairs officer, and they immediately have an opinion about what we should be doing about messaging and about the strategy and about what we should be telling this people and these people. And I just have to kind of sit there and be like, okay, all right, no, I think that's a good idea. Knowing like I have no control. I mean, that's the thing, like you guys think in your minds, you're like, oh man, she's a commander. Well, I work at a place right now where like, I'm basically like an action officer, I'm the mid-level officers. And I go to, especially one meeting I go to every day where like, it's, 2 stars and 1 star generals and admirals. And so, but I would say, so that's probably some of the challenges is that everybody seems to think they know how to do communications and everybody wants to do communications. And the thing is that especially in the military, the message, especially if it's an operation or something that's very sensitive, the message is so tightly controlled at the top. It is so, because they cannot afford to have anybody not on the same page. So the messaging, the strategy, and so it can almost seem stale. Like you see kind of what President Zelensky's doing right now. He has such a compelling message. He's got, he's really able to just galvanize the entire world around him through his messaging, through his storytelling. And I'll be honest with you, we don't have that same fight at the moment as the United States, and we don't have that same story. And so I think some of the challenges that I see in public affairs is how do we make our story resonate? How do we get that out there? How do we get people to even care what the DoD is doing sometimes? I would say that's the challenge. The most amazing part about what I get to do is obviously the people. I absolutely love working across a staff in learning about what everybody else does. I mean, there's so many neat jobs in the military, like foreign affairs officer. It's probably one of my favorites. They get to go work with the, you know, state departments and do security cooperation and all this other stuff. And I love learning about what they do. But all the different, I love working with the operators or ops. We call them like the threes, because they're like on the ground. They're the ones who are planning the operations and saying what's going to happen next. So we call it current ops. I find that to be very fascinating. So I think the best part is learning the process, and I'm a process fixer. I like to see where there's something wrong and then what can we do to fix it. And so learning how a process works, and then where are the gaps in that process, and then what can we do to make people's lives easier.
Wow. That the constant learning really stood out there. And your ability to learn from everybody without feeling intimidated is also something that goes to show what you've learned along the way, right? From the bullied individual to, I can stand my ground. I can contribute in that. That's great.
Well, and I kind of know that I'm sort of a rare breed. Like I don't see myself as acting like most Navy military people. And I think that's okay. There's others out there like me. Not many, maybe, but I always think I'm sort of like this anomaly, fresh of breath. I'd like to think of myself as sort of a breath of whatever that word, you know. Fresh
air.
Yes. I'd like to think that I go into a meeting and I say something or I have a suggestion and it comes from left field and it's welcomed because it's different. You know, you've got a bunch of mostly white middle-aged men in a room. And so it's nice when there's a little bit more diversity. And so, and I think that I see things from a different perspective. And so hopefully that adds to the conversation. So I think that's my favorite part is just being able to walk into a room, listen a lot. And that's something I've had to learn over time, is to listen. That's one amazing thing about being a podcaster is listening. You really get a lot more practice. Sometimes I would listen to my first podcast where I was interrupting guests and I'm like, ooh, you know?
I still do that on a regular occasion. Gary's so much better about that.
It's just because you get excited. You get excited about what someone's saying, and you're like, oh gosh, I want to get my point out. And then it's like, oh God, I didn't. Yeah.
You know what though? Like you're talking about the power of diversity, and part of your success is that you don't fit the quote unquote mold of who you are, and that I love that. I love when people come into whatever it is, whether it's an organization, an industry, or whatever, and they take their uniqueness. I guess you could put that. My wife calls me unique. I said, "You're just calling me weird." I understand. That's fine. It's like, oh, you're very unique, but that's where, in my opinion, real innovation comes from. It's being able, like you said, first of all, to being able to listen, and then. They always say think outside the box. I don't know why that term just doesn't really. I've never really liked it. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's more of like you're intensifying the collaboration because of your uniqueness. Do you know what I mean? I think there's so much power in that.
Right, and I think it's important too when you come in. Like I'm just helping out the office that I'm working in right now, and so. It's very important that you figure out how you best provide value and what it is that your superpower is. Everyone has one. Everyone has something that they're really good at doing or they really enjoy doing. And then so how do you find that thing that you really enjoy doing? Like some people, like I was talking about this earlier, some people like being firefighters. And I call those the people that just, oh my God, a media query came in from New York Times. Let's answer it. All right, this is what we're going to say. And then everyone's just flurry, spin. That is not me. No, I get it. And I'll work those queries, but I don't get excited by that. I just kind of get like, oh God, did they really want to ask this question? And why? Can't wait till the morning. You know, but some people get really excited by that. And it's like, it spins them up. And then what's the next thing? Okay, what's the next fire we got to put out? What's the next thing in my inbox? Sure. I don't get really motivated by that. I get more motivated by like, oh, we hadn't thought about putting this thing on the SharePoint portal with a button where everyone can just click on it and then they can like go, just because people are so busy or they just don't have the chance to think about some of those things. And so when a new person can come in and look at something a little bit differently, I think it sometimes enhances the process. But knowing the kind of person you are and the kind of things that get you excited, and then finding a way in your office, even if you're the most junior person on the totem pole, finding a way to use your creative skills. And then that's a good leader too, is the one who can see what people are most inclined to want to work on, the projects that they jump on without being asked, or the things that they tend to take longer to work on, or the things that they're, real excited to do. You have to learn how to navigate people to doing those jobs so that you get the most out of them and they get the most out of the experience.
Wow, man, your nuggets of wisdom have been spot on. They've been nailing me over and over and over again, but just to see your journey has been something that it's the stuff that people need to hear. But on top of that, once they apply it, especially finding out who they are and understanding that they have something to contribute to whatever table they're sitting on, is so pronounced. And being you, it's obvious that you are so comfortable in your own skin right now. And it emulates. I appreciate that. Just can't thank you enough for taking the time, especially now that it's approaching 8 o'clock over there.
7:40. I'm all right.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I am in a really good place now, and I don't take it for granted either. And I don't think that my life is always going to be amazing. And I don't think that, and I think I'm still going to have suffering ahead and hard times ahead. I think that now that I'm a little older, I know how to seek out those resources faster and use things like therapy and other resources more easily at my disposal than I would have when I was younger. But I think that's the other piece too, is I think that we're always on a path and we're always growing and learning. And, this is just where I am at the moment right now today. And I don't take it for granted. I'm very grateful.
Well, you have a pretty awesome superpowers. I think you have more than one too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity and having me on the show. You guys are great. I'm in like a great mood now. Thank you.
We are as well. So we need to keep this up. We need to make sure that we're visiting often. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys.
All right, you too.